Hello, my name's Ted. This is the Issues of Life, and we're going to pick up where I left off, and just talking about giving to God and what that means and uh, why and how. Um, and I talked a little bit about how it was a personal struggle for me when I first started out. And we started out with 2 Corinthians 9 and verse 7 says, "You must each decide in your heart how much to give, and don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure, for God loves a person who gives cheerfully. And God will generously provide all you need. Then you will always have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others." Okay, we'll stop there. Um, so, in the last session, I mentioned that, I struggled with this because when the bucket would go by, um, you know, I was living paycheck to paycheck and on a budget, and it was like, geez, I don't know if I have. And I was also taught that you need to give 10%. You need to give 10%. Well, 10% is a lot when you're living on uh, living on potatoes and bread from the food ministry. You know what I'm saying? So, uh, but here's some things that I learned that really helped me out a lot. First of all, um, we talked about money and what that means, and money just represents your life. You're giving, of your time, your effort, your talents, and you in exchange for that, you receive a certain amount of money, which is the accepted form of trade these days. Simple as that, practical as that. But money represents your life, you know. It represents that many hours of your life that you dedicated to that activity. And so when you understand that your life comes from God and everything in you, your talents, abilities, your health, your ability to even think, all that comes from God. And so, um, you know, when it came time to give, attitude would be I was able to adjust my attitude to, God, all that I am and all that I have is because of you, and it's for you. So therefore, this is what I'm going to give. Now, what is the key to being a cheerful giver? Here we go. You must each decide in your heart. And let me repeat something. This is something I struggle with. I was like, I want to be a cheerful giver, but I know in my heart that this is a struggle. I'm not so cheerful with putting this money in there. So what's the key? What is the key? You must each decide in your heart how much to give. And don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure. And, you know, for me, it was very important to decide beforehand to have this conversation with God and decide beforehand, make a decision. You know what, God? This is how much I'm going to give. I'm going to give it faithfully. And every time I receive money, you're the first one that I'm going to give to. You're before the mortgage, before the rent, before the car payment. I recognize with this amount that you are my source. You gave me the ability to even have this money. So I'm going to recognize you with this amount. And this is something that I've already decided between me and him. And now that I decided that, every time I go to church or wherever, every time I give, the bucket goes around or whatever. Now I've already established that I don't have to struggle about it. So now I can give cheerfully. And it says not reluctantly or in response to pressure. You know, there's a lot of teachings out there. I remember there's one teaching that they used to say that you're a thief if you don't give a certain way. And talk about pressure. I love God. I want to obey. I want to obey His word, and I want to do things according to how He's established. But to teach that, I'm actually a thief if I don't do it a certain way. Talk about pressure, right? And I think about it this way. What brings more joy? Let's use an example. Let's say you know somebody that is going through some hard times or whatever, and they uh, they have a need or they need some money, whatever it might be. And you just they never sent anything to you, anything like that, but you find out and you decide, okay, I'm gonna help this person out. Okay. Now, when you do that, now we don't do that necessarily thinking I'm going to do this because I know it's going to bring me joy. That we usually you don't think that would be selfish, right? But you do it because you want to help. You do it out of the goodness of your heart, your generosity of your heart. And that when you do that, that does bring joy to your heart. And God loves that. But let's say same scenario, but the person comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm going through this. Do you think you can, do you think you can give me, a certain amount of money, whatever it might be?" Now, not that you wouldn't do it, but it just takes a little bit of that joy away. Okay. Not that it doesn't bring joy, but there's a little bit more pressure or a little bit more maybe feeling of obligation in that scenario. So, but when you've already had the chance to look at it and decide for yourself without any pressure, then that's where the joy comes from, right? That's where the joy comes from. And you know what? On the other end of that, and I'll wrap this up with this. You know, besides that, if you're given a gift reluctantly or under pressure, you're giving it to somebody who wants the gift. Who wants something that's here, you can tell the person doesn't want to give it or is struggling to give it to you. At that point, you're like, please just keep it. So there you go. Decide in your heart beforehand, give freely and joyfully. And God loves you no matter what, but He loves it when we're able to do that. This is the Issues of Life.